But think of like I said, you're going to bring the hands up. You're going to get ready with Koiguchi no Kiringato. That's the first 5 points, right? That's in that part right there. Now we have this, like I said, pressing down on the shins, tightening the buttocks and squeezing, rolling the knees inward. And this is all going to help to get us up. And we're lifting ourselves straight up. First we do this, then that, bury, and cut. Okay? So remember, you have to get the sword moving. This is one of the most common mistakes on doing this, is where people get up to the top and then they start to move the sword when they're at the top. All right? And you've already closed your distance to your opponent. He's already seen a lot of movement, and there's no sword attack initiated yet. So you need to move the sword earlier. So let's think of it this way. That we start getting this first 9 points going right away. After the Koiguchi no Kiringato, that's this part where we take these first 5 points here, all right? As we start to go up, we're going to be burying the left hand right through number 9. By the time we hit the top point, we want to be almost up to the top up here and ready to go. Keep in mind though, we have to get to live feet and then attack. See, the balls of the feet, this is, anyone who doesn't know it, I'm assuming most practitioners watching understand this. The feet are live. They can't be flat down this way. They have to be alive. Okay. So welcome to the Hidden Movements of Japanese Swordsmanship. I'd like to share with you 4 of the points of the 25 that are in the Nukitsuke. Most people have difficulty with the Nukitsuke, and that shouldn't be. There's a systematic way to approach the Nukitsuke so that there's no resistance as the sword moves from the saya. So I'd like to go over 4 of those points with you, and I hope you enjoy the video. Before we actually move into Nukitsuke, I'd like to go over some ideas about how the sword moves, and this is very important. The left hand in Iaido, and my instructor told me this early on, the left hand is neglected, and the secret of Iaido is in the left hand, okay? So think about it this way, that the sword is in the right hand, and this is where the action is, this is where the excitement is. We're moving the sword, we're attacking with it. So generally the left hand gets neglected, or at least not used to its optimum abilities. All right, so I just want to show you a little exercise, and think about this as we continue with the practice for the rest of the day. Okay, so when we have the sword, as we're looking at the sword, people call this the sword. Okay, this is actually a sword and a saya. All right, you're looking at 2 parts to this. If you're thinking of just this as one part, then you're going to think of the right hand as maybe just the hand that's doing everything. But actually, there's equal understanding of both hands, or equal use on both hands. So let's do this. Let's put the left hand up here as if we're getting ready to draw the sword. No one would ever just take the right hand and bring it directly to the side without moving the left hand to take the sword out. Okay, just standing there with the sword out. No one would ever do that. Okay, so this is the first clue that this is something we should be doing in our belt. We're going to pull the saya away as we bring the sword out to the side. And you can see how that expedites and how that assists in the sword moving out, and moving out quickly. Okay? Next point, when we move the sword from the saya, there's a natural tendency for this to happen where there's a bend, and now you can see this angle that we have here. There's tremendous pressure being exerted on the internal inside of the saya. Okay, again, this is normal based on the physics of this, the motion. So think of what we do with the left hand to compensate for that. There's this little action like this as we're moving the saya out that takes the tension off of the blade. This is very important. So as I take my left hand back, I'm just going to let this hang down a bit. Okay, see the way that's hanging down? All right, now you can see there's a lot of tension happening on the side, but watch what happens when I press. I'm going to press this and align it. Okay, so watch. I'm doing this with my hand the whole time the sword is traveling. Okay? Once again, watch. The whole time the sword is traveling out and the saya is moving away, I'm lifting the saya upward. See that? This would be it hanging down. This is it lifting upward. Okay? So you're setting up the line between the saya and the sword so they move on the same line. Okay? Those two things were happening outside the belt, as we just demonstrated, moving the sword. When the sword gets put back inside the belt, the same two things have to happen. Without that happening, there's always going to be created friction. There's going to be timing problems, everything that's going on with the sword moving. There's going to be a lot of resistance there, okay? So those are two important things. The next thing I want to tell you on this is the third point, and we're going to have 4 points altogether. The third point on this is that the fingers, for not only safety, like when the fingers, instead of the thumb, a lot of people will push the tsuba with the thumb, and then they'll leave the thumb up here, floating in the air, close to the ha area, okay? And this is a live blade, so there's a lot of danger. If the fingers are up in the air like this, they're in the vicinity of the ha, where they should be along the base of the sword for protection, okay? So when we release when we start to move the saya back, releasing the sword, we're always going to take the thumb and fold it around and hinge it onto the pad of the index finger, okay? So as I push and I bring my left hand back, I dropped my thumb, and my thumb is now touching on the back right here against the index finger. Okay, so again, let's think of the first part. The first part of that is safety. Another part of that, though, and this is an important hidden movement, is that it acts like a soft rail. The mune, or the cutting edge, the mune, or the back edge of the sword, is riding along this rail. So beside being safe, it's keeping the sword centered. It's keeping the sword quiet, moving in and out. All right, and it's keeping the sword floating, where it's floating on just lightly on the fingers. It's got some type of a little bit of help there, rather than it leaning against the back of the inside of the koiguchi and just dragging along the wood. Okay, so this is an important point. Not to mention, as we do this, when you're riding along the mune with the hands here, because my hand is along the back of the mune, it's on the other side of the cutting edge, okay? Anytime these fingers get around here toward the cutting edge, there's this extreme danger. So we want to just move along this way, okay? So those have to do with moving the sword as the sword's coming out of the belt, and also closing in the noto and the sword going back inside the belt. Okay, the last thing, point number 4 I'd like to explain is the right hand, the hand that's controlling the sword. There's always movement in the wrist throughout our technique, and this is something that's lacking with a lot of students and instructors, is that the hand doesn't move, or the wrist doesn't flex and move, all right? In the Nukitsuke, on this horizontal line, the small finger presses outward and tries to bend back toward the outside, okay? And this is the way it would be done in the Nukitsuke. When we come up in the furikaburi, we bend the wrist to the inside because we're coming in over the shoulder. So we're bending the wrist inward. Rather than just keep it the way it is from the cut, just keep it this way. We're going to bend the wrist a little bit inward as we move it. The kiriroshi, when we come down, we're going to press and we're going to force out and down. Again, forcing it this way. The chiburi, when we come in from here and we go forward, this is a pressing point where the wrist moves outward and down. And lastly, with the noto, when we swing across, if we keep this hand rigid and we don't bend it, it's going to be very awkward to adjust this to accommodate the noto. So the wrist is going to roll to the inside before it touches down. Okay, so these are the points that I just went over. Let me recap on that. Okay, number 1 was that when we move the sword, we're moving both hands. As the right hand moves, the left hand has equal amount of importance and is moving the saya away from the sword. Number 2, there's always this tendency for the sword to want to bind against the blade, so we're going to have a little bit of action of pressing down to take off the tension of the sword. Okay. Number 3, the pinch. This is one of the most valuable moves for safety and for guiding the sword in and out of the saya. Pinch along the back of the mune. So as soon as you release the sword, your thumb drops along the inside of the pad of the index finger as it travels. And lastly was the wrist actions. Okay, we're going to make sure that in these 5 essential techniques that we always have wrist actions. Okay, and thank you.